Thank you so much for joining us. We've just heard of the big challenges for the USA, for Biden and Harris. They've obviously got to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy, racial injustice, and of course uniting the nation. Never mind the very real security concerns that Simon was just telling us about. Is that likely to take centre stage for the new administration, and the rest of the world's just going to have to wait a bit?
Well, thanks, Sally. I couldn't hear what Simon said, but what I do understand is already President Biden has decided to sign some executive orders, two of which actually deals with squarely international matters. The one is the Paris Accord, to try and rectify the withdrawal from that accord in terms of climate change, which, as you know, is very important. The Obama administration were the ones that actually entered into that agreement. And secondly, also the Iran nuclear deal, which clearly the Democrats as well as Biden feels it important to re-engage with the Iranians around that particular deal. So already on the international front, there are those two pertinent ones, as indicated by the incumbent chief of staff of Biden. So, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of domestic issues. I'm sure you've spoken about it. But I think that Biden is aware that there is a level of untrustworthiness within the international community, and he would have to start repairing that.
Over the last 4 years, what has happened to Africa-USA relations, and specifically South Africa-USA relations? Have they stayed strong?
They have not. The truth of the matter is that the racist Trump saw Africa in a very particular light, in a very bad light, referred to it as the, backwaters and other adjectives that he used.
That's a polite way of putting it, yes.
Indeed. And so didn't give a lot of attention. I think that the ambassadors and consulates on the continent was at pains to try and give a positive image, try and keep relations going. But from Washington, it was a very frosty affair. I think in South Africa, the American ambassador here, has tried her level best to try and make sure that relations are good. We had a very difficult AGOA trade agreement negotiations with the outgoing Obama administration, but very little from the Trump administration, quite frankly.
All right, Oscar, well, thank you very much for joining us. Just in terms of what South Africa should be doing as the new administration comes in the USA, is there an existing relationship? We know that our president has congratulated Joe Biden already, but are there good ties there to bode well for the next 4 years?
Very much so. They are both vice presidents who have come into being the presidents of their respective countries. They have cordial relations. They've met on a few occasions. I think what is important for South Africa is to ensure not only that the AGOA agreement is strong and that we have that trade agreement behind us, especially since both countries are wanting to sort out the economies, get it back on track. So I think that's an important element. But also, more importantly, is President Ramaphosa, as you know, is the chair of the African Union. And I think there, too, they would want to have a number of issues put on the table, both in terms of security matters within Africa. We see an extremist uprising in Mozambique, and there's a few other hotspots to mention a few. And then, of course, from trade relations, we've just have the Africa Free Trade Agreement, and how is that going to bode with the relationship with America? So there's lots on the agenda to actually clarify.
And you mentioned those executive orders that we expect to see being signed a little bit later today. So those are some of the quick and immediate actions: rejoining the WHO, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord that the USA is going to do. But in terms of cementing international relations, you've mentioned a couple of things. But the USA traditionally has always been such a lead player. Where do you expect the USA to take the lead in the coming years and months?
As you know, Salis, the United States have always been an advocate of democracy, Western democracy as we know it. They've gone to the extent of fighting wars and conflicts to ensure that nations subscribe to democracy in the manner in which they understand it. And this episode that we've had coming out of this last election, the storming of the Capitol, and just general mayhem and chaos has really left the U.S. at a disadvantage in terms of its reputation internationally. And so Biden and Kamala Harris will have to work very hard to try and reestablish that trust, as well as countries, third world countries for that matter, listening and taking them serious, because I think that the old days of having the bigger stick is not going to work. They will have to start coming to the table and saying, we know that we have reputational damage, we could have done things better, but please, there is still a model of Western democracy that is important.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, international relations scholar and political commentator, Dr. Oscar van Heerden.